Are you a writer who's interested in writing the book, or maybe you are a tabletop dungeon master or game master if you don't play Dungeons and Dragons, who's kind of interested in making a story, or maybe you are a filmmaker in the making who is absolutely desperate for literally any kind of advice possible out there. I don't know how you got here, but welcome to the channel. I am your host, Slick, and today I'm going to try something a little bit different than what I usually do. Kind of branching away from gaming videos and stuff. And I would like to try something new. What I'm going to be trying here is I'm doing a mini series on this channel where I will be talking about using my own uh, Dungeons and Dragon campaigns and my first campaign, especially since it's finished. I'm going to be kind of talking about how I kind of set up like the stories, the world building, all of that, in the hopes of, maybe through storytelling, world building videos and stuff like that, and kind of branching all over the place, I can eventually end up with my future goal for this channel, which is to be able to make a short film. So you guys are kind of here along for the ride as I'm kind of messing along with this, and I just want to welcome you to the channel. This is the first video in I don't know how long this series is going to be. I'm aiming for like 5, 6 videos. Probably going to be more, probably going to be less. We will see how things go, depending on how much you guys like this content. But with that out of the way, I'd like to go ahead and get started on the main concept. And the first thing I would like to talk about is especially the main focus for this video is going to be conceptualizing stories, storylines, coming up with like a main thing. So most writers can kind of draw their own inspirations from somewhere. Most most people can kind of realize, no, just because a story is out there and stuff does not just because a story that you like exists out there does not mean that you can't still make it unique in a weird way or still write it in a way that, is enjoyable. Maybe you want to do some absolutely crazy, unique, never before done concept. Like, I'm going to throw out here the idea of like Tenet with the ability to have the most of the concept of the movie per se, most of the plot was not really that unique. I think the most unique thing about Tenet, what really made it stand out to me and what makes me think of it right now, is the concept of having time flow both forward and backwards, and the fact that they had to have people actually record conversations talking backwards normally, so it sounded normal when they reversed the footage. Um, but my point being, ignoring the insanity of Christopher Nolan. um, just because a story exists out there or it doesn't does not mean that you have to or do not have to write anything about it. The best story that you can ever come up with and write is a story that you enjoy and a concept that you like that you want to run with. Um, really bad at this. The only real thing I can do to give any, you know, my own side of the story is to talk about my first Dungeons and Dragons campaign. I'm gonna speed run the bullet points for you. I can always go way more in depth on this in a future video. Like I can make a video in the future if people want of how I got into Dungeons and Dragons. But I went into college in 2018, started learning what Dungeons and Dragons was in 2019. By the end of the year, I had decided I liked playing enough that I wanted to run a campaign and wanted to write a story for people to enjoy. So I started doing some research, stuff like that, and I kind of, as I was trying to figure out what to write, I realized I wanted to stick to a normal fantasy-esque kind of story, just because that fit the aesthetics of Dungeons and Dragons really well. And I wanted to still try and change things up a little bit, working around with it, and I definitely had no idea what I was doing. And for any Dungeons and Dragons or Dungeon Masters or Game Masters who exist out there who see this video, whether it is after immediately after I post it or in the future years, you'll probably be like, but there were so many modules that exist this stuff. You could have run something like Curse of Strahd or War for Eberron. I don't remember the actual name for it, but hi, you don't know me. I'm extremely stubborn, and when I set my mind to something, I'm going to do it unless there is no feasibly possible way I can get it done, and even then. But um, yeah, I wanted to write my own story, and I felt like the module stuff was somebody else's story that I was just retelling, and that didn't really hit my vibe. I wanted to write something custom, something unique. And so I started going online and I started listening to music and trying to come up with an idea and just kind of sitting there thinking about old book series I've read, thinking about old board games, movies, TV shows. Like you can draw inspiration from anywhere, genuinely, to just kind of give you that little nudge. And you'll definitely see that here as I'm going to talk about like the main things that individually shaped the idea of this campaign, and you would never have probably put these three together in a single grouping unless you heard me talk about this right now. So, yeah, when I was in looking up stuff 2019, I was looking at some board games, other things like that, and I managed through both listening to YouTube videos and scoring through the internet. I ended up finding somehow the old board games from Lego known as Lego Heroica. If you don't know what it is, that's why I'm here to tell you this. Lego Heroica was a board game where you had a bunch of people native to a country who were watched as monsters like orcs, ogres, uh, golems, giant spiders, evil druids, and stuff like that, attacked and took over their home country. And so the whole board game's premise is you play as a character and you're an adventurer who fights these guys in order to retake the country. And if that kind of sounds familiar, well, I mean, retaking your home country is a very, or retaking your homeland from an invasion, or like fighting an invasion is a pretty decently common story arc as far as I'm aware. But the characters really kind of caught my interest because you have characters you could play as, which are like the wizard, the barbarian, the druid, the ranger, the rogue. And if any of these kind of sound really familiar, is because some of these are actual classes in Dungeons and Dragons. Like there's the sneaky rogue, there is the barbarian, there is the wizard, etc., etc. The only character that I can think of at the top of my mind that is not a D&D class is the knight. But let's be realistic, he's probably just a paladin. Let's face it. Point being, moving on from that, I kind of like the idea of like, okay, so they can fight like an invasion of their home country, and I want to watch as my party, who are all native to this land mostly, retake this country. And it was really a fun concept and idea that I had going for it, but unfortunately, I felt like it wasn't enough. I felt like there was more that could be done because I wanted my party to be very personally invested in this campaign. I wanted them to be emotionally and just tied to this campaign experience because I want my players to be immersed. I want my players to genuinely feel the impact of everything in the campaign. And when the beginning of 2020 hit, um, that's kind of when it finally clicked for me. So my university was running an event called Humans vs. Zombies, which TLDR, very simple. It's basically Nerf blasters in a game of tag where the zombie tags a human, the human turns to a zombie. Codenames Kids Next Door, Operation Zero Moment. Anyone? And the humans with the Nerf blasters and stuff, if they hit a zombie, then the zombie is stunned, aka they can't tag anybody and convert them into a zombie for a brief period of time. So you would watch a lot of people running around campus with Nerf blasters, just trying not to get tagged, and zombies going absolutely insane and like with elbow and knee pads and just absolutely diving for ankles and stuff like that. Like it was insane. But I was like, there might be some interesting stuff out of this I might be able to look at. And after thinking about it for a while, eventually the last piece of the inspiration finally hit, and that was the Bread Boys YouTube channel. Uh, it, it was the big hit video, like the son. Have you been reading Heresy recently? Like, if you haven't seen that video, I'm gonna put it here in the background of the channel. I'm probably gonna shut up for a second so you can hear it.
Son, have you been reading Heresy recently? Unacceptable.
Yeah, that video. That kind of that kind of got me really laughing, and I really started, like, as they were posting videos, I would eagerly watch, and I liked the idea of like a crusading father with a shotgun, constantly dealing with his heretical son. And eventually they did one video where they talked about Jerusalem. I don't remember what happened. I They mentioned Jerusalem somehow. And I thought it was really interesting, like crusaders with shotguns retaking Jerusalem. And I thought about humans versus zombies, probably the easiest connection you could take there. And then I decided somehow to tie the insurrection part. But what ended up happening was I made the campaign into two parts. And part one was essentially the Holy Crusade. I wish I was kidding. This was the genuine sales pitch I gave my own players. Holy Crusaders with shotguns retake Jerusalem from weeb zombies. Don't ask me how the weeb part came in. I think it was the funny idea of zombies running around like Naruto, which is what really sold it to me. But I was not expecting anyone to be interested in this campaign. I was expecting people to look at me and go, "What is wrong with you? You're insane," and walked away. And somehow I managed to get enough people to play immediately almost. Like, we started that campaign. I think I finished writing that campaign like right before the summer started, like somewhere around like May, and we started in like August of 2020. And spoiler alert for that campaign, we finished that campaign actually a few months ago in like April, May of 2023. Like, we went for 2.5, almost 3 years of that campaign from start to finish. Yeah. Um, but I knew that I didn't want it to just be one, like, just the zombies issue, and I knew I didn't want it to just be the invasion and insurrection. So what I ended up doing was I made Jerusalem this kind of like island, like this location off the mainland of the country. So when the party left to go and save Jerusalem from the weeb zombies and such, by leaving, they also ended up weakening the area around the country enough to the point that a insurrection from within could lead an entire invasion of outside forces and take over the country. So when the party returned, they had to fight to reclaim the country. And you can kind of see what I'm talking about with like conceptualizing and taking inspiration from other ideas and just throwing things together on a board and see what sticks. Like, genuinely, do you think that separately on their own, humans versus zombies and bread boys sure can kind of work together, but like those two ideas and Heroica just do not seem like they really mesh together at all. Like, I don't think anybody else would have been stupid enough to try this. And yet somehow this campaign was genuinely loved so much by my players that they asked me, when am I making another campaign? And so I'm basically getting ready to run them through East Asia, the campaign. Don't worry about that. We'll talk about that in another video. But maybe. We'll kind of just I'm kind of just talking about conceptualizing stories. I don't know if I'm really helping out at all. I figured that talking about like how I managed to grab three random bits of media and mesh it together somehow was a good way, but like, I feel like the best advice, and I said it before and I'll say it again, the best advice that I could give someone who's trying to conceptualize a story together is, if you have certain ideas that you like or you find interesting or you gain inspiration from some form of media, take it and just run with it. Like, see what you can come up with. There are plenty of things that don't think that they should mesh, but they somehow do absolutely in a way that would make the story feel unique and one of a kind in its own way. Like, I mean, I just talked about my own. What else could I even come up with? I guess you could kind of go off the deep end and be like, okay, let's write a story about what happens if, an extra, like, I'm gonna go for less of a campaign setting and more for just a general story. Imagine writing a story about aliens visiting the Earth, But instead of talking to us, they go into the ocean, and then after a while they leave. So what happened in the ocean? And you can kind of just take ideas like that and run with it. I'm pretty sure somebody on Tumblr has come up with that idea or something. Somebody on the internet has come up with a concept like that. I'm pretty sure. If that does in fact exist out there, my apologies. It was just an idea. I just kind of thought about like aliens visiting Earth, and I thought about just what would happen with the ocean instead. And it was just an idea that came to mind. If you already kind of beat me to the punch, well, there you go. Like I said, there are absolutely there are random ways to come up with the most out of this world and creative ideas. And sometimes if you want to, sometimes your story doesn't have to be the most creative thing. Maybe you want to basically run your own spin-off of Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, and that's okay. If you're looking to run a campaign, don't feel ashamed to take a lot of ideas from the media out there. Like, hey, you can grab like a basically Lord of the Rings and turn it into a campaign and let your party change how the story flows. I'm pretty sure that if you had like 6 different campaigns all based on the same concept of Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, I don't think any of the 6 of them, even knowing Lord of the Rings, I don't think any of the 6 groups are going to end up being exactly word for word, detail to detail what happened in the Lord of the Rings, honestly speaking. Like, you might get close, you might have people do some similar stuff, but they might do stuff completely differently. And if you change up enough small details, that's still a creative and unique personal story. So, don't feel ashamed about it. Grab your own inspirations from media, grab your own ideas, whatever floats into your head, and whatever you really like, just try and find a way to make it all stick together. And if you can find a good way that it all flows together, then you have that story right there. don't don't worry too much about what other people are going to think. This is the biggest piece of advice I could give you. Don't worry about what other people are going to think as you're creating it. Worry about how much you like the idea of the story and how much you want to enjoy, how much you enjoy it. Because I have found at least that a writer, a storyteller, is only going to really enjoy the stuff that they are putting out there if they themselves enjoy it as well. And if you enjoy it, others will see that you enjoy it and watch as you pour your love into this, and they'll come to enjoy it as well. Um, yeah, that's the best advice I have for you. I'm really sorry that I'm kind of tangenting, going all over the place. I feel like I'm not really. I feel like I should probably structure the video a little bit, but the reason I don't really have like a set script I want to read from is because if I just read from a script, then I feel like I'm being very generic. I'm not being very heart to heart. I'm not being genuine. And I have found that in multiple versions of me talking about this topic and not just recording, just talking about the topic in general, um, I have found that like sometimes I find comments that I'll make that I realize later don't really seem genuine to the content, or like I'll be like, oh, I didn't really plan on ever talking about that, but I guess that kind of fits in here somehow. Yeah. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about in this video, just conceptualizing the stories. If you like the video, be sure to hit the like, be sure to subscribe. This is going to end up being a mini series. The question is how much you guys are going to enjoy this. Oops, sorry, hit the mic. I don't know if you'll hear that, but that's going to be it from me today. I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your day, and just, yeah, I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.